Skyblock Update 0.11.5, better known as the Ender Slayer update, changed Skyblock in a way that no one was really expecting. With the introduction of a new Slayer type, a universal damage nerf, and completely flipping the dungeons meta on its head, I'd argue it's one of the most influential updates we've been given in recent months. Overall, I'd say it was a pretty good update, bringing some much needed changes to Skyblock as a whole, even if some of those changes weren't exactly positively viewed at launch. But, though mostly positive, there's one item in the Ender Slayer lineup that's been a part of much controversy in recent months. That item, of course, being the infamous Juju Shortbow. Today, I'll be breaking down what it is, how it functions, and the effect of it on the game as a whole. Also, right off the bat, I don't want to seem like I'm attacking anyone who has a Juju Shortbow. As it currently stands, it's an amazing weapon and I don't fault anyone for using it. I just want to bring up what it's done as a whole and some things I personally think that should be changed, all while being as unbiased as possible. However, before I talk about what it is and what it did, first I have to cover what it actually is. And that requires me quickly running through what Slayers are. I'm sorry if you're one of the active players here who already know what they are, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So Slayers are a type of pseudo skill / money sink in Skyblock. You start a quest, you kill a certain mob, and after enough kills of that mob, a boss spawns. Killing that boss rewards you with special drops, sometimes very rare ones, and a set amount of Slayer XP. So leveling up a Slayer type rewards you with bonuses and access to special item recipes relating to that type of Slayer. Currently, there are 4 types of Slayer bosses, each with 4 tiers. I'm only going to focus on Ender Slayer today because those are what's important. The Juju Shortbow recipe is unlocked after reaching Enderman Slayer level 3, equivalent to 50 tier 1 Void Gloom kills or 10 tier 2 Void Gloom kills. Upon reaching level 3 in Void Glooms, you unlock the Juju Shortbow recipe, which can be seen here, and of which I'll be calling simply Juju for the rest of this video, since adding Shortbow to the end of it is kind of a mouthful. These materials may seem pretty daunting, but minions and simply buying the materials off of Bazaar can help alleviate a lot of the potential grinding you have to do to obtain this. That, or you can just take the easy route and buy it off of the auction house, which currently sells them for about 20 million coins at the time of writing this script. There's another function of Juju that's important to this video, and that's the fact that it's a short bow. Currently, there are 2 classes of bows in Skyblock, normal bows and short bows. Normal bows function like you think they would, being fully drawn and fired like normal, with critical hits only being given if the bow is fully drawn. However, short bows fire instantly, with no charge time, no movement penalty, and critical hits being given every single hit, assuming your critical chance is high enough. That's enough of a baseline for now, so let's talk about the pros and cons about Jujus. So in my opinion, there are 3 distinct advantages that make Juju supremely powerful on first glance. Its absurdly high stats, its class as a short bow, and its ability to convert it into a dungeon item, of which I'll cover one at a time. First are the stats, which on first glance don't look that great, but when compared to other good bows like the Death Bow, the Last Breath, and the Venom's Touch, you'll see that none of the other bows even come close. Obviously base stats don't mean everything, but in just stats, Juju surpasses almost every single bow in the game, being eclipsed by only Terminator, quite literally the upgraded version of it. It also whoops every other bow by being a short bow. It fires faster and hits criticals faster and more consistently than other bows, but there's even more to it. Short bows benefit from bonus attack speed, shooting faster the more attack speed you have, with 100 speed almost doubling the fire rate of the Juju. So just quickly double the Juju's damage per second, no big deal. My third point is that it's dungeonizable, but not because it's simply able to, but because it uses one of the cheapest essences and, most importantly, has an absurdly low catacombs level requirement. The Death Bow, being one of the better conventional dungeon bows, requires catacombs level 28 to use. Juju requires cat at 15. Access to floor 6 unlocks a cat at 19, essentially locking Juju into the position of an early to mid-game dungeons bow, which I'll touch on more later. The final, and less notable but still good point to bring up, are arrows, more specifically the new arrow types brought by the Weaponsmith update. While Jujus were already excellent at what they did, the new arrow types brought them to a new level of insanity, making them able to clear, kill bosses, and overall be much better than what they used to be before the update with arrows, such as bouncy arrows making them capable of clearing rooms super quickly, or explosive and frost arrows increasing their single target damage even more than what it was. The cons for Juju are much less concrete than its pros, but I'm still going to argue for them since I think they're important. The first is that, while Catacombs 15 is a relatively low mark to reach, it's also probably the only good archer weapon of its class. From the beginning of your dungeon's journey to the point where you can use Juju at Catacombs 15, there isn't a whole lot of other options, assuming you want to be a full-time archer or berserker. Not that there aren't any alternatives to Juju, just that in terms of good dungeon bows, there isn't a whole lot to use, both before and after Juju can be obtained. If you want to play Archer or Berserker in mid-game dungeons, you're almost required to use Juju, which can be both a good and bad thing. Another con is that it consumes arrows very quickly. After the Weaponsmith update, which added various new types of arrows became much more expensive and varied, and with the amount of shots that Juju can fire in a relatively short amount of time, arrows must be replenished frequently, lest you can't use the bow anymore. However, overall, I think the cons of Juju are far outweighed by the pros, at least when you're talking about just the bow itself. The arguments for and against Juju are pretty numerous, however, their overall impact on Skyblock as a whole has been admirable, to say the least. A single weapon completely changed the way dungeons were played, and for the foreseeable future, I don't think that's going to change. Enderman Slayer was meant to be a new Slayer to challenge players, both new and old, but now it's become, for a great percentage of the player base, nothing but a wall meant to overcome if they want to use Juju. Currently, the single most commonly used weapon inside the catacombs, I would argue, would be Juju's. Its power level compared to the requirements to use it is staggering. A decent archer or berserker setup gets completely carried by the Juju, and that same archer or berserker weapon can take you from floor 5 all the way to almost master mode floor 3. It's insane to think that this weapon single-handedly made archer and berserker two of the best classes overnight, and made the bow itself near ubiquitous throughout the entire game. The community has coined the term Jujunon because of it, with the term itself referring to an early to mid-game player who hasn't touched any part of the game that doesn't include the word catacombs in it. I've seen people liquefy every single item they own, save for their armor, talismans, and pets just to get a Juju, and honestly, it's kind of heartbreaking. Paying for someone to kill your Void Glooms to get Ender Slayer tier 3 just to get a Juju is a common occurrence now. Don't get me wrong, Slayer carries were a thing before, but not to this degree. It's just baffling to see how a single item has uprooted the entire community in almost every aspect, both in the sense that it flipped the meta on its head and completely snapped progression in half, wildly changing what the optimal dungeon strategies were, and definitely for the worse. It's gotten to the point where Juju is so good at what it does, both in single target and room clearing, that most people who get it think they don't have to upgrade. They stick with Juju almost indefinitely, completely halting their dungeon progression. And honestly, who could blame them? For what it is, Juju is so much strength wrapped in such a small price tag that I'd argue they're half right for not wanting to change. Why would you upgrade to a 1 billion coin Terminator when your 20 million coin Juju does 75% of what Term does? But it's gotten to the point where Juju is an unofficial requirement to run lower level dungeons, and the people who have them are unnecessarily toxic towards players that don't, and players who have Terminator or Hyperion or better have become toxic to those who still use Juju. It's basically a requirement to run dungeons with people, and that's sparked a super toxic environment that doesn't need to be there, both towards players that don't have a Juju and even players that do. Overall, Juju has been an interesting weapon, in that it both completely overpowers every single weapon in its tier, and overrides every natural progression of dungeons that we had, being almost the defining weapon of catacombs. I, personally, think it needs to be changed, but not in the form of a power nerf. I think where Juju currently is damage-wise is fine. The gap between Juju and its other Shortbow brothers is big enough, but something needs to be done about its low catacombs requirements. For what it is, Juju is way too powerful for its stage of the game, in progression, and in my opinion should have its requirements raised. Having almost the entire community drop whatever it's doing and start grinding Jujus was a bad move, though admittedly one the admins couldn't have seen coming. I'm not gonna say what its requirements should be raised to, I'm just saying it needs a raise. Its near universal use should be toned down quite a bit, as I don't think any weapon should have this level of ubiquity of usage, because the amount of Jujus I see being used is staggering to say the least. Anyways, that's going to be the end of this admittedly longer style of video I tried making. If you guys liked it, make sure you like and sub and share it with your friends. That would be greatly appreciated because this video took a ton of time to make. Also, if you haven't, you should totally join my Discord where I am totally not giving away your Juju or two because of this video. I would never do that, what do you mean? Anyways, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day and I'll see you all later. Peace.